Every day, we walk around dressed in whatever style suits us. But the fashion industry has a dirty little secret. It's the second dirtiest industry, sitting comfortably next to oil. The clothing industry is the second largest polluter in the world. It's a nasty business with a very nasty mess. And every day we contribute to this industry, keeping it alive and just as dirty. But the industry is just as complicated a business as it is dirty, involving long and varied supply chains of production, raw material, textile manufacture, clothing construction, shipping, retail, use, and ultimately disposal. The fashion industry carbon footprint is tremendous. And to produce a general assessment of the impact the fashion industry has on the environment must take into account a variety of factors and not just the obvious pollutants. Pesticides used in cotton farming, the toxic dyes used in manufacturing, and the great amount of waste discarded clothing creates, and much more. So what are the impacts the fashion industry has on the environment? Well, to start with, different fabrics have different impacts depending on what they're made of. Nylon and polyester are made from petrochemicals and are synthetics that are non-biodegradable. So if it gets thrown into a landfill, it's going to stay there for a very long time. And because of this, they're inherently sustainable on two accounts. In my last video, we discussed landfills and how they produce methane gas, a greenhouse gas that is 21 times more potent than carbon dioxide. While nylon manufacture creates nitrous oxide, a greenhouse gas that is 310 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Making polyester uses large amounts of water for cooling, along with lubricants which can become a source of contamination. And both of these processes are very energy hungry. And then there's rayon, another artificial fibre made from wood pulp, which on the face of it seems more sustainable. But, and this is a big but, old growth forest is often cleared or subsistence farmers are displaced to make way for pulp wood plantations. This type of tree, to which I can't pronounce the name of to save my life, draws up phenomenal amounts of water, causing problems to sensitive regions. And to make rayon, the wood pulp is treated with hazardous chemicals such as caustic soda and sulfuric acid. And it doesn't end here either. Cotton, a natural fibre, also has its problems, as it's the most pesticide-intensive crop in the world. These pesticides injure and kill people every year. It also takes up a large proportion of agricultural land, much of which is needed by local people to grow their food. Chemical defoliants are sometimes used to aid mechanical cotton harvesting, and just add to the toll the cotton industry has on the environment and human health. All major processing stages along the cotton value chain, such as dyeing, bleaching, and finishing, use large amounts of chemicals which have an environmental impact. Most of these chemicals, such as heavy metals or chlorine bleach, cause pollution by the mill's wastewater, and many can be found as residues in the finished products. The development of genetically modified cotton isn't a solution either, as it adds to the environmental problems on another level, and organic cotton is quite another matter. But I will give credit where credit is due. Over the past 2 decades, many improvements have been made. Chemicals are increasingly recycled or replaced by safer alternatives, and wastewater is treated so to reduce pollution. But these improvements mainly concern processing mills in rich countries, and substandard environmental practices are common in developing countries, where most clothes are made. And again, we see PVC, just as we discussed in the last video about landfills. This is a notoriously toxic material, and sometimes clothes are made from it. And harmful solvents like those used in glues and to stick plastic coatings to some waterproof fabrics. The manufacturing processes are just as bad as getting the materials. Dyeing alone can account for most of the water used in producing a garment. Unfixed dye then often washes out of the garments and can end up colouring the rivers when treatment plants fail to remove them from the water. Dye fixatives, which are often heavy metals, also end up in sewers and then rivers. Cloth is often bleached as well, using dioxin producing chlorine compounds. And virtually all polycotton and easy care, crease resistant, permanent press cotton are treated with toxic formaldehyde, which is also used for flameproofing nylon. So, as you can see in this very brief explanation, the clothing industry has an enormous environmental impact. Greenpeace collected samples of wastewater discharged from one textile industrial facility and found the presence of a number of hazardous chemicals. And worse still, some of the wastewater from the facility was highly alkaline, which will burn human skin coming into contact with the stream, and will have a severe impact, most probably fatal impact, on aquatic life in the immediate vicinity of the discharge area. The fish population in rivers near these facilities have suffered a drastic decline. And is it any wonder? The spinning, weaving, and knitting stages also use a lot of energy to produce solid waste and generates dust and noise, and also involves use of lubricants and oils to strengthen and protect fibers from the stress of the processing. These substances are then removed before the next production phase, which involves a huge amount of water and the use of more chemicals to protect it in transport and storage. It is thought that the average t-shirt travels the equivalent distance of once around the globe during its production due to transport between different processors. This adds even more to the carbon footprint of the clothing industry. But just like landfills and plastic pollution, it has an economic effect because there has been a strong trend among retailers recently to shift their processing mills to low-wage countries in order to increase their competitiveness. Many textile factories in these countries don't comply with national and international minimum regulations regarding labour rights. This causes low wages for workers, meaning they don't have decent living conditions for themselves and their families. Long working hours beyond 48 hours a week. Workers often face health risks due to a lack of safety precautions and appropriate equipment. They are exposed to hazardous chemicals used for cotton dyeing or finishing, and so much more. The list goes on and on. More than 60% of world clothing is manufactured in developing countries. And once manufactured, the garments are put into shipping containers and sent by rail, container ships, and trucks to the retailer. There's no way to gauge how much fuel is used to ship these clothes worldwide, but 22 billion new clothing items are bought by Americans per year, and only 2% of those clothes being domestically manufactured. That means that a total of 90% of garments are transported across the world each year. And all of this has an effect on your health, but unfortunately I'm starting to run out of time, so I'm going to try and slip at least one thing in very quickly. A single container ship produces as much pollutants as 50 million cars in just 1 year. These pollutants are linked to cancer and asthma. The low-grade bunker fuel, burned by ships, is 1,000 times dirtier than highway diesel used in the trucking industry. And they don't consume fuel by the gallon, but by the ton per hour. Pollution by the shipping industry is beginning to affect the health of those living in coastal and inland regions around the world, and the emissions of ships continues to go unregulated. So what can be done about it? Behind the scenes, major international brands are conducting business with suppliers that cause this damage to the environment. And that just sponsors toxic water pollution and murky business practices. I know there isn't much we can do, but we, as the consumer, can at least play a small part in the change of the clothing industry so that it may reduce its environmental impact. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see all you beautiful eco warriors out there in my next video.